Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our first hybrid meeting. This is very, very exciting. So we have the opportunity to come in person and view online as well. So hopefully this goes well. Where is everybody viewing from right now? Let's see what we got coming in. Can you see the chat there? We're here at the Nature Center, but where else are we? Gotta click right there on the chat. Are you afraid to touch? There we go. Oh, Lakewood Ranch, not very far away. Springfield, Ohio. We got some more in Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch. All right. I got Maine, Asheville, New York. So from all over, this is very exciting. I know we're seeing some exciting stuff. There's a couple of flocks of cedar waxwings here at Celery Fields that people have been seeing. Anybody else here see anything exciting recently?
I know there's been nighthawks on the hill.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Anybody else? Yeah, nothing else new, exciting? Did you?
Please repeat the birds so the people on
Where?
Zoom can hear them.
In
I'm
Tampa?
supposed to do this part.
Okay, sorry.
Just repeat the birds so that the people on Zoom can hear them.
Okay, yeah, Towhee. We saw Towhee, a Carolina chickadee in Tampa. There's some nighthawks on the top of the hill as well. Anybody else online see anything?
We're not getting anything online.
You're not getting anything online?
Well, they're telling me where they're viewing from, but not what birds they're seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, we got,
Can you ask them, please, just tell you what birds they might be? Anybody here seeing any cool birds?
we got people have shrikes in their yard. All birds are cool. I agree. I love crows.
Somebody told me they
That's
saw
not a very popular
swallowtail.
opinion.
Say it again.
Somebody told me right before they saw a swallowtail kite flying right over the roof of the.
Yeah, they are definitely back. There's one that flies above my house and he is back. He, she, I don't know which one. We got least sandpipers at the quad pond. Oh, Gene, that's super exciting. The water finally went into the quad pond this week. And we already have least sandpipers. That's amazing. It is working. All right, so I'm going to continue on just because it's hard to navigate all of the incoming information. So tonight is actually an election night for the board for next year. This is our executive board that's up for vote. You will get a link after this meeting. And you need to vote whether you approve or disapprove, or if you have other suggestions, let us know. All votes and suggestions are welcome. You have 24-hour period to respond, and this is something we do every year at this meeting. So whether you're online or here, you get to vote. And that we have for president, myself. First vice president, Bill Sullivan. Bill's in the audience here. You guys won't be able to see him, but people here can. Bill is new to the board, so that's very exciting. Second vice president is Lynn. She is also here. Secretary is Sindhu Dagamali. She is not here tonight. She's wonderful, and her son is an avid birder. And treasurer is Jean, who is online and who has been messaging. So look for that coming into your inbox. Giving challenge. This is a big deal. So the Community Foundation of Sarasota matches every donation up to $100 for one 24-hour period every 2 years.
Patterson.
That 24-hour period is this week. So it's from noon on April 15th to noon on April 16th. And we will send emails with links and everything. But $100 is your match amount, and they will match that full, complete amount. We have tons of things that we fund with this money. There's a number of projects here that we're trying to do. You know, over the course of the next year, we're going to need to update the gazebo as that's gotten old. It's wood. We have the building that is starting to get older and needs some maintenance. Always the gardens. We fund field trips for children. We've launched a bunch of educational programs that could use funding. We need some technology updates that would definitely be funded with this. Another project that we're working on over the course of the next year is all of our archives. It's our 75th anniversary next year. And all of our archives are in scrapbooks going back to like 1951. And we need to get those digitized and scanned in so that we can turn them over to the historical center at the library and they can archive them. And if we digitize them correctly, then those records will be accessible to everyone across the country who's doing research. So that's a big project that we're kicking off this summer. So April 15th to 16th, any amount is great and it will be matched up to $100. Please, please, please consider giving to us. That's all I really have to say. Tomorrow we have bird trivia. So there's a bird naturalist meeting at, I think, 12:30, and then directly at 12, and directly following that at 1 is bird trivia. And we did this at Volunteer Appreciation last year, and it's so much fun. So it's open to all members. Come on in, enjoy some bird trivia. It's super fun.
At 2.
At 2. Okay. It's on the slide. Sorry.
Tomorrow.
And then the bluebird thing.
Oh, what's the
What?
The Bluebird Society on Saturday.
Oh, the Bluebird Society is on Saturday at 1 p.m. Sorry, I misread the slide. So there's a Bluebird Society meeting on Saturday at 1 p.m. and we do need people to be part of the Bluebird Society and check the Bluebird boxes. So if you're interested in Bluebirds and you want to learn more, that is Saturday at 1 p.m.
It's a
here
full
at the
presentation. It's not just a society meeting. It's a presentation for new folks to learn about bluebirds.
Okay, it's a presentation for new folks to learn about bluebirds.
Okay.
We also have nature journaling that's happening April 25th. This is free. It's at 9 a.m. and it's hosted by Big Waters. They are coming out to do a nature journaling with us. So if you're interested in nature journaling, that's a free activity that we also have available on April 25th at 9 a.m. Oh, mushroom log work. So this is actually really cool. There's a girl here in town. She's very young. She just started a nonprofit about cleansing the soil using mushrooms. And she's going to be doing some research projects with the quad, but she's also going to do a workshop to teach you how to have a mushroom garden at your house. And she's going to help you guys build these logs where you insert the fungus into the logs and the mushrooms will grow at your house. It's really, really cool. That's on May 9th from 2 to 5 here at the Nature Center, and you can register online. So look for that on the calendar. And she's really interesting, and it should be a very interesting class to take.
I think that's it. Oh, no.
That's it.
Oh, yes, we do need people for kids outreach. This is just a final thing. Festivals like Wild About Nature and like we did at Fly Wild, we have that booth now, and I'd really like to do more events. We get asked all the time to do youth events. So if you like working with kids, we have all the activities set up. We have the booth all set up. We just need people to work the booth. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to us. Contact editor@sarasotaAudubon.org, and we'll compile a list of everyone who's interested in working with children and would be willing to work the booth at events. All right.
That's it.
You're up.
All right.
Hi, Karen.
Well, I think everybody knows by now, but Tina Morris is here live to tell us about her experiences and her.
Oh, wait a minute. We're having a Zoom issue.
What?
We're having a Zoom issue.
What's wrong?
Stand by, please.
There's Karen.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, so Tina's here to talk about her book, Return to the Sky. This is very
This is
crazy.
very weird. Sorry.
Everything's fine on my end. Okay. You guys are good. Keep
We're
going.
not seeing your screen on the screen here, so just let's be quiet. Let Margie talk.
Yeah, it's all fine on this end. So
Okay, so this is the book. And Tina's right there. So, this is the surprising story of how one woman and 7 eagles helped restore the bald eagle. Especially in the Northeast, in the US. So I'm thrilled to say that we have Tina here because she approached Sarasota Audubon and said she'd like to come and speak to us live. So this was great for us because synchronistically, I've been whining and complaining to Sarah, who's been very tolerant, that we really need to have live meetings again. And if we could do it, we'd like to combine them with people at home and do a Zoom. And so we're still working on it, as you can sort of tell, it's sort of working. And it's sort of a new technology. That is, most of the people who are at this meeting are online. I understand it was 74 at last count, and there are about 27, or it looks more than 27 here now. But to make this possible, I especially want to thank Sarah Reisinger, Karen Willie, who is talking to us on my computer over there, and my partner Leslie Austin, who's in the green shirt and is,
Trying not to tear my hair out getting this working. Please be patient.
and of course, Tina Morris, and we're really thrilled about that. So just to fill you in a little bit about Tina, she's a wildlife biologist, ornithologist, and author of the book, Return to the Sky. And it's, as she's going to tell you, it's the remarkable story of her pioneering work as an erstwhile graduate student, reintroducing bald eagles to the wilds of New York State. And I highly recommend this exciting and well-written book. As someone who's also writing a memoir about swallowtail kites, Tina's really a role model for me, and her book is really, I can tell you because I've read it several times, it's really a good book. And she's we have several copies here, and some people might have bought them. And she'll be doing more book signings. She did some before we started, and she'll be doing some afterward as well. So just a little bit more about Tina. She did her undergraduate work at Oberlin in anthropology. And then, I love this, she talked her way into doing graduate work at Cornell Lab of Ornithology, the best way to do a graduate program, on what also is the subject of this book and have talked tonight. So thanks to researchers like Tina, now, and you'll probably be able to tell us this better, Tina, but there are like 70,000 bald eagle pairs flying free across the continental US, and plus another 30,000 in Alaska alone. So this is very important work that she was a pioneer in developing. So thank you so much for being here, and please come and tell us all about your.
We're gonna have to indulge us for 2 or 3 minutes to get this going.
Yeah.
So,
Talk to your neighbors.
yeah.
We need to know each other a little bit.
And put it on speaker.
This is her thing that was up before. Her thing is what you need to put on that computer.
If you haven't, this is so complex, but she's
Yeah.
on Google. She's not on a normal thumb drive.
Right, she's on her program on the
I
computer.
know, but
That
It
was-
will
Since the
show up
audio
when
is off.
she
This is-
shares the
You
screen.
have to-
It will work.
You know, I think we just spent about 2 hours trying to do it.
But you had it up already.
I'm not managing that.
Love technology.
You talked about, this is your presentation, right? This is the Audubon.
No, that's the Audubon.
Have yours watched.
I don't know what she's doing. Do you know how to do this?
Is this your computer?
It's my computer.
Put your presentation.
So please,
on.
no, it's really screwed up.
Okay.
Thank you. We just need to find view. Oh,
The
God.
wonders of technology.
This isn't view right over here?
No, that's video and audio.
Okay.
Audio is now working. So you know what? Go into share screen. Marty,
Yeah.
tell Karen we need to find view on.
Why don't you sit here? I can't hear over you.
You,
Tell Karen, all right.
well, I can hear you. What do you need?
Karen, she needs to change the view on her computer and I can't find it.
The view, the display?
Yeah,
Oh my
in
goodness.
Zoom, in Zoom.
Oh,
I'm gonna have her share screen and you can tell her where to go.
okay.
Thought we had this fixed.
Yeah. I
You
think
have it
if you
fixed?
No, I thought we did before.
if you share the screen, it should work at this
Okay, just
point.
share screen. Get your slides up and share screen.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that's showing on the screen here is me on Margie's computer, and it shouldn't be. Margie's computer is not hooked up to the HDMI at all. I don't know why it's showing her screen.
Because
Tina's
her
computer-
speaker, yeah, it's working now. You turned on the speaker, so it should be fine.
Yes, it's fine. Great. Okay, ready to go.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
We're off
Take
to
it
a great
away.
start. All right. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you for that great introduction, Margie. It's really fun for me to be here because I've heard about the celery fields forever. And I honestly pictured a plowed field of celery. And I could not understand why people were making such a big deal about this place. And there were so many birds. Why would they be going to this? Anyway, I found out today. And it's amazing. It's really quite spectacular. So thank you for inviting me here tonight. And it's just a real pleasure. And I wanted to speak about my book, Return to the Sky, the story of the bald eagles I was trying to save 50 years ago. It's hard for me to believe that it was so long ago. Although there were a lot of other restoration programs going on during the 1980s in the Northeast and the Southeast, this was the first one. And it was what really kick-started the bald eagles recovery. So I think it's a very important story for everyone to know about. If you read the book, you can find out all about how I came to the program and what happened after the program. But for now, I'm going to be talking to you about the 7 eaglets that started everything. And they basically took center stage, and just like their spectacular relatives that range throughout the Northeast and the Southeast and pretty much the entire US, they do this very well. So in the 1970s, there was a time of magic in bird conservation, and this talk is dedicated to those people who made that happen. Some of you may know some of these people, and I hope that you will convey that to them. It's also a positive story, which we probably need to hear today in light of the bird's decline. So with that, I will continue on. And by the way, I will just have a short apology to those of you who are avid birders and probably know a lot more about them than I do. I may be saying things that you already know, but I want to make sure everybody is on the same page. So here we go. Some of you might know, in December 2024, President Biden signed legislation which made the bald eagle our national bird. Now, for some of us, we thought he was already our national bird, and that includes me. But it turns out that a man named Preston Cook, who was very active with the National Eagle Center in Wabasha, Minnesota, discovered that it never had been named as such officially. So he was able to convince both houses of Congress, which you can imagine was not an easy feat, but in this case it was, everyone agreed, that they would pass legislation that would make it our national bird. And President Biden signed this legislation on Christmas Eve, right before he was to leave office. So it was very fortuitous. So we can now accurately refer to the eagle as our nation's bird and have Preston Cook to thank for this effort. The saga of the bald eagle was inextricably tied to that of the peregrine falcon. Without its smaller and faster friend to set the pace, the success of the Eagle Project might not have been so auspicious. And the raptor biologists who were responsible for the restoration of the peregrine falcon were also the guiding force behind the restoration of the bald eagle 3 years later. The story of the bald eagle and the peregrine began in Ithaca, New York, in central New York State, home to Cornell University. And perched on the southern end of Cayuga Lake, one of the Finger Lakes, called that for their long and skinny shapes, Cornell was known for its world-renowned laboratory of ornithology, but it also, in the 1970s, was the epicenter for raptor reintroductions. We need to back up a decade, however, to the seminal event that started everything, In 1962, a marine biologist named Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, the book that sounded the alarm about the lethal effects of pesticide DDT. At the time, few biologists paid any attention to Carson whatsoever, partly because of her doomsday predictions and partly because of her gender. Women were very scarce in science at the time, and most scientists tended to dismiss her. It was her findings about DDT, a long-lasting pesticide used to combat malaria during World War II, that made Carson a main character in the bald eagle story. She discovered that DDT wasn't just killing the mosquitoes it was meant to control, but was also breaking down into its metabolite, DDE, which was then absorbed by the algae fish and other organisms consumed by birds. Once ingested, DDE interfered with the bird's calcium metabolism, resulting in the thinning of eggshells. So when they tried to incubate the eggs, they would break, and the bird population started to plummet. Although all birds were being affected, it was the raptors and the ones at the top of the food chain, the osprey, the pelicans, the bald eagle who eat fish, and the peregrine falcons who eat smaller birds, but those birds were in turn eating other organisms tainted by the poison. Through a process called biomagnification, the pesticide was consumed by species at each trophic level. So its concentration increased with every step of the food chain until its final and top destination, the predators. Sadly, Rachel Carson died at the age of 56, only 2 years after her book was published. But luckily, her findings had been corroborated by the U.S. Geological Survey's Patuxent Wildlife Research Center in Maryland. The bird world was shocked by the truth that explained the demise of their favorite birds. Carson's cause was taken up by a group of people with personal interests in the raptors affected by DDT, especially peregrine falcons. In 1965, led by a falconer named Joe Hickey, who was then a professor at the University of Wisconsin, a conference was held in Madison to talk about the problem. At that meeting, the Raptor Research Foundation was born. The 1970s became the age of enlightenment as the federal government took up the cause of environmental degradation. Under Richard Nixon, whose administration, unbeknownst to many, had a strong commitment to the environment, legislation began to be passed to curb our decline. In 1970, Joe Hickey organized another meeting in Madison, this time to call for the ban of DDT. In December of that year, the EPA was established to be the watchdog for clean air and water. And in 1973, the Endangered Species Act was passed, basically to protect not only the species, but also their habitat. Let me introduce the fathers of falconry. The three men were most instrumental in addressing the plight of peregrines. Tom Cade was a falconer and ornithology professor then at Syracuse University before he came over to Cornell. Heinz Meng was mastering the art of captive breeding at SUNY New Paltz in New York, and then, of course, Joe Hickey. Although the falconry world was close-knit and everyone helped each other as they considered how to save the peregrine, it was Tom Cade who established the Peregrine Fund, the program that would bring it back. He moved from Syracuse to Cornell with a stipulation that he could house a captive breeding facility in Ithaca. And because there were no peregrines left in the Northeast, it meant he had to go further afield to find birds and bring them in to captive breed. So he had to find subspecies in order to replace the species that had been completely gone from the Northeast. He created a facility known to the Cornell community as the Hawk Barn, which he positioned right next to the Lab of Ornithology. The barn was divided into flight cages with nesting ledges to resemble the peregrine's natural eyries. For here, the art of artificial insemination was mastered, although excited male falcons forced their handlers to wear some self-defense equipment, like this modified helmet with a lip around it to catch the semen while protecting their heads. Male falcons can get very excited. The peregrine program used hacking, a falconry technique whereby young birds are raised and released without parents. Sometimes these young falcons can be bred in captivity, and sometimes they are taken from the nest at a young age. In the latter case, the birds have imprinted or identified with their parents, so they will mature and live as members of their species. The peregrine falcon program placed young falcons into hacking boxes where they were tended by caretakers or human attendants who stayed out of sight as much as possible, took care of the birds until they were ready to fly and feed on their own. The hack boxes were placed in areas that closely replicated the peregrine's natural habitat, such as cliffsides or ledges, towers, and sometimes buildings in cities when the program had to move into cities to avoid the predation by great horned owls and raccoons that would grab the young falcons out of their nests. After its ban in 1972, DDT levels detected in fish declined precipitously. So by the mid-1970s, the bald eagle's former habitat had become clean enough to receive birds again. Having witnessed the success of the peregrine program, New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation foresaw the year 1976 as the ideal time to bring the eagle back from the brink of extinction. By then, DDT had decimated its populations throughout the Northeast, except for a few breeding pairs left in Maine. Patriotic fever was running high, but nobody wanted to bring the eagle back. Celebrate the bicentennial without their national bird, or what they thought was their national bird. Although almost gone from the sky, the eagle's image was ubiquitous, appearing on our currency, on sports team logos. Both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Florida Gulf Coast University have the Eagles as their logo, which I think is very cool. And of course, on our national seal, despite Ben Franklin's disdain for the eagle, which he considered of bad moral character, supposedly because of its scavenger nature. The turkey and other contenders didn't stand a chance against the grandeur of the bald eagle when our forefathers were looking for a symbol of power, majesty, and freedom to represent the newly independent USA. By 1976, in the lower 48 states, the eagles had been reduced to 417 pairs, a number too low to sustain the species. According to the terms of the Endangered Species Act, the federal government controlled the eagle. And so New York needed permission from the Department of the Interior in order to be able to run a reintroduction program. DEC's proposal to release eagles was denied because they didn't have any raptor biologists on their staff who could run it. Enter Tom Cade and his young and inexperienced wannabe graduate student, me.
Mhm.
I had arrived at Cornell to pursue my dream to work with Dr. Cade. But when he told me I needed a funded program in order to be accepted as one of his graduate students, my dream started to plummet. Then, by pure serendipity, I ran into two Fish and Wildlife administrators who were in charge of the defunct Eagle proposal. And they decided to ask Tom Cade if he would run the program. And he turned to me and said, if you're willing to work with the Eagles, I will be willing to supervise the project. Well, you can imagine what my answer was. This was a dream come true. I said, of course I will. The project began officially in June 1976, but the groundwork began to be laid the previous fall. The first order of business was to find a suitable site in New York from which to release the birds. Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge near Seneca Falls at the northern end of Cayuga Lake, the opposite end from Cornell, was selected. Montezuma met all the requirements needed for a release site. Food would be plentiful in the 10,000-acre wetland complex of marsh, rivers, and open water. The presence of a wide variety of water birds and fish guaranteed its food potential for young bald eagles as well as adults returning to breed. Protection of the young eaglets was paramount, so the release site had to be able to be cordoned off from the public and inaccessible. Clark's Ridge, a hilltop overlooking Shockey Pool, the largest water body in the marsh, was hidden amidst a labyrinth of roads that traversed farmland around the refuge and was impossible to locate. This was, of course, before the days of GPS and Google Maps. It was important that the site be near Cornell so the peregrine team could be available in case I needed them for emergencies. And so the drive from Ithaca to the refuge took less than an hour. Bald eagles prefer to nest in tall trees in the V formed by strong branches used by the young to practice their flying. The adults like to be able to see around them, so they want to be high up and on the edge of the forest. Montezuma had many hardwoods surrounding the wetlands areas perfect for future nests. Once the site was chosen, the dilemma was, where are the birds going to come from? Finding a source of young eagles that could be transported to New York, which hadn't been affected by DDT, was going to be difficult. Because there was no sustainable population left in any of the surrounding states, it would be necessary to go further afield to areas where DDT hadn't left its mark. Now, Alaska had plenty of eagles, so that wasn't the problem, but the larger subspecies was thought to be problematic genetically. Florida, it turned out, had some eagle nests, but unfortunately not as many as they would be able to donate to anybody else. And they also had a smaller subspecies, which was also thought to be problematic. So we ended up going to the Midwest, particularly the Great Lakes states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota, where DDT hadn't been used as it had in the Northeast and where there was a healthy population of bald eagles and states that were willing to donate them. Bald eagles generally lay 3 eggs, many of you know this, and try to rear 3 young. However, because of food supply and energy expenditure, often the 3rd eaglet is smaller and weaker than its siblings and doesn't make it. They are either thrown from the nest or pushed aside by the stronger ones until they starve. Therefore, the plan was to select this 3rd eaglet from these 3 bird nests for transport. When the climbers scaled the nest trees to band the young eaglets at about 7 weeks of age, it was up to them to determine which eagles to select. The position of the nest tower in the refuge was critical. Not only did it have to be hidden from the public, it had to be high enough for the young birds to survey the land around them, near tall trees that they could use as perches once they started to fly, and most of all, near the water. Clark's Ridge met all these criteria. The local electric company donated and installed 4 35-foot high poles for the tower, on top of which we constructed a 7-foot platform. My peregrine team colleagues and I had to think like eagle parents and build a nest that closely resembled the ones they had left behind in Wisconsin. The next step was to create a canvas blind or hide next to the nest so that I could observe and feed the birds without them seeing me. The blind was barely large enough for me to sit in cross-legged. There was a hole on the side facing the nest through which I could feed the birds using a long barbecue fork, so they never knew that a human was their food provider. This was so important because if an eagle thinks that a human is related to his food supply, it can be very dangerous for both species. At first, I had to climb the platform using metal pegs like those used by electric linemen. But once the scaffolding was up, my ascent became far easier and a lot less scary. I was even able to conquer my incredible fear of heights after the scaffolding went up. We wrapped aluminum predator guards around the poles to prevent animals like raccoons from reaching the vulnerable young birds. The day finally came on June 18th, 1976, when Wisconsin Fish and Wildlife climbers called to say they had 2 eaglets on their way to us, ready to ship to New York. Arriving at Syracuse Airport in 2 separate crates, the birds, known as W1 and W2, W for Wisconsin, 1 for a female, 2 for the male, were retrieved by federal officials and then driven to the refuge an hour away. On hand to receive the eaglets was a large contingent of state, federal, and refuge people, a few biologists from Cornell, Tom Cade, me, and my 2 dogs, Max and Moses. While most of the entourage stood at the base of the tower looking up, I think they were glad they didn't have to go up there, Dr. Cade tied the ropes around the crates. His assistant, Jim Weaver, pulled them up onto the tower, and Dr. Cade and I then pried open the tops and released them. The eaglets had been shrieking with their call-like cry inside their crates before we let them go. And then they jumped onto their new nest to get as far away from their captives as possible. These weren't tame, cuddly birds who wanted to be our friends, and for that we were very grateful. It's so important for an eagle to have a healthy fear of humans if they are to survive. After the eaglets settled down and the crowd dispersed, I was left alone on the hillside with my 2 dogs, wondering how on earth the eagles and I were going to survive the next 3 months. The first order of business was to set up my campsite, including my tent, my camp stove, and all the paraphernalia I needed to take care of the birds. If I look a bit perplexed and panicked in that picture, it was because I was wondering how on earth I had gotten myself into this position. To observe the birds even when I wasn't up in the blind, I had a remote video camera with a monitor that was in the tent. The picture was a bit fuzzy by modern standards, but at least I could see that they were okay. Many of you have experienced probably more advanced technology, especially if you've been looking at the eagle cams in Florida or in Big Bear Valley in California. You feel like you're in the nest with the parents and you're part of the whole family, and that was not the case with 1976. The next order of business was to feed the young birds. The marshes were teeming with carp, but of course I had to figure out how to catch them and stockpile them so that they would be available for 2 meals a day. In the first year, fish were plentiful, and I was able to basically trap them in a spillway and then move them into a large cage in the water where I could net them whenever I needed to. But the second year, we had a severe drought in the refuge, and actually most all over New York State in general. And I had to make friends with local fishermen in order to restock my supply. And they were very nice because they had no idea I was up on this hill doing what I was doing. But we became friends and they helped me out. Eagles are opportunistic feeders, as you may know. And so although fish is a mainstay of their diet, they will also eat small mammals and water birds as well as carrion. To give them a balanced diet and introduce them to the delicacies of the real world, I had to find roadkill. I spent hours driving the roads around the refuge, picking up rabbits, squirrels, muskrats, woodchucks, and snakes, among other things, and other tasty morsels. By the way, rabbits were the food of choice. I knew we had to be able to track the eagles when they left the nest. So banding and equipping them with radios became the next step before they fledged. Surveillance methods, especially for eagles in 1976, were in their infancy. So everything we did was trial and error. Lots of experimenting. We eventually worked out how to attach a short-term radio to the eagles and to put color tags on their wings that would withstand weather, but also would show up from a distance. Because of their dependency on flight for both hunting and migration, it was really important that these apparatuses not interfere with their wing movement. We had to modify things considerably between 1976 and 1977 when we figured out what worked and what didn't. My issue was going to be restraining the eagles, especially when I had to handle them alone, which was a lot of the time. For this, I experimented with several body wraps, but what worked best in the end, believe it or not, were my blue jeans. I cut off the leg, and its tapering shape was a lot like a straitjacket. It was perfect fit for an eagle. He couldn't move his wings, and with his talons wrapped with electrical tape, he was safe and secure, and so was I. After spending my days watching and recording the eagles' behavior from the blind, I noticed a considerable increase in their energy level. They began becoming very restless, hopping all over the platform, and even gaining height to the point where they were banging their heads on the top of the enclosure. So I got worried that they might hurt themselves. It was probably time to go. So I released them out onto the perch that we had nailed to the tower. Now, you might think that this was a wonderful opportunity for me to see the eagles taking their first flight. However, before an eagle takes its first flight, he does not have the muscles that he really needs to be able to reach something that is like resembles a perch. He looks more like an out-of-control helicopter looking for a landing place. And unfortunately, every time they decided to make their first flight, they went down into the cattail marsh, well below the hillside, which was interspersed with small pools of water. So, first of all, if I had been an adult eagle, and this had been my baby, I would have found him on the ground, fed him until he was strong enough to reach a perch, and then we all would have been fine. But as it was, I had to find him using my radio. I had to locate him in the middle of the marsh. He was soaking wet. Each one was soaking wet. I had to catch him, haul him out of the marsh, back up the tower, put him back in the nest, give him a quick lecture on how we're going to do this better the next time, and then we were off to the races. I must say that hauling an eagle under one arm, struggling eagle, by the way, under one arm while I'm grabbing onto the ladder with the other arm trying to climb 35 feet in the air was not an easy task. Eventually, they did grow stronger, and they were able to reach a perch, either on one of the trees near the nest or the dead snags in the marsh. The 1976 eaglet spent a lot of time exploring the areas inside and outside the refuge, and eventually learning how to find their own food, which we weren't absolutely sure they could do without a parent. So this was a major thing. But in October, the hunters ended up coming into the marsh and scaring them off, and they left the refuge for good, leaving me to wonder if they would survive all the threats that waited them in the outside world. Once their radio batteries died after 3 weeks, I had no way to follow them, so all I could do was hope. In late winter and the spring of 1977, we began to prepare for the next group of eagles, and this time we decided to hack 4 birds. The scaffolding had to be removed so a second nest platform could be built next to the first with the blind in the middle so that I could observe and feed the birds on both sides. With the scaffolding gone, I was back to the metal pegs for climbing. Like a mountain goat, I would clamber up to the platform, push aside the plywood door, pull myself inside the blind, and hope that I wasn't making any noise that would possibly disturb the birds. In one of these photos on the left, you can see that my shorts are missing their legs, so therefore they were in use as the blue jean sleeves that were pulling the eagles out of the marsh. In 1977, 2 of our eaglets were taken from 3 bird nests, one from Michigan, M1, and one from Minnesota, M2. But we also wanted to use captive birds for the first time. So Patuxent Wildlife Research Center offered us 2 eagles that were raised by eagle parents held in captivity there. There turned out to be a big difference between the captive bred birds and the wild birds. The captive bred birds had an unlimited diet at Patuxent. They were used to having people around, and they were much larger and more precocious than the wild birds. They had no desire to be contained behind bars, so on the day of their arrival, they immediately went out to the perch, and they even jumped up onto the top of the enclosure for a better view. The video camera had been moved to a pole next to the nest tower so I could see both nests at the same time if I happened to be on the ground in my trailer, or what was my trailer the second year. The first year, it was a tent. In July, a game of musical chairs was in order. All 4 eaglets were still confined in their nests when I was told I would be welcoming a new arrival. A 3rd eaglet with a broken leg had been discovered by the climbers when they were securing our eaglet M1 in Michigan. The injured bird, whom I called M3, was sent to the vet college of the University of Minnesota to be treated and rehabbed, and he was now ready to be released and was on his way to me. Since the 2 Patuxent birds and M1, the female from Michigan, were ready to fledge, I took the bars off their cage and I put M3 in with M2, and luckily they got along okay. I have to say at this point that M3 was a very special bird to me, and he was the most endearing and calmest of all of the eagles that I cared for. We will be hearing more about him later. The secrecy surrounding the Eagle Project was well kept during the first year. Everyone was worried about vandalism if everybody knew the eagles were on the ridge. And some of them were kind of worried about me being alone in the middle of nowhere with only my 2 dogs for protection. But there was also uncertainty about whether the program was even going to work. And so the government folks didn't want it advertised until they were sure the eagles were going to survive long enough to leave the refuge. In 1977, such secrecy was abandoned, and I was besieged by media looking for a juicy story. Reporters would come for an interview armed with cameras, and I would find a simple snapshot used to lure everyone to a front page article in the New York Times about the birds and their young female caretaker. My camera-shy nature was not well suited to this new role I found myself in. Some of the notoriety was welcome, however. In the fall of 1977, I was invited to attend the New York State Fair in Syracuse to be inducted into the Iroquois Nation as an honorary member of the Iroquois. Although I was nervous about going, it was probably a memory I will savor forever. I spent the day with members of the 6 Nations. I learned about their customs and culture and their incredible devotion to the bald eagle, and I was lavished with handmade gifts from each group, including a sacred eagle feather, which you may know nobody can have except for a Native American. So this was very special. Apparently, I was the first female to have ever received such an honor, which meant that the wives of the chiefs, who had never been part of the ceremony before, were actually able to run it that day. And that was an historic moment for them as well. After the eagles left the refuge in the fall of 1977, my tenure as the eagle caretaker was over. Although I never saw these eagles catch their own fish, I knew that they were doing it because they weren't going after mine that I left for them on the tower. So I knew they had a better deal somewhere else. But once they stopped, I knew that I could return to Ithaca and complete my thesis, which became the Manual on Hacking Bald Eagles. By the 1980s, 9 other states had adopted our hacking procedures and were releasing eagles. The last state to do so was Tennessee, which hacked birds until 2020, exceeding even New York's total of 198. New York continued to hack eagles in Montezuma from 78 to 81, deciding eventually to move the projects to other sites in the state because they thought they wanted to allow the breeding birds to return to their natal area. But as it turned out, we misjudged eagles. They don't mind nesting near each other as long as there is an ample food supply. So we didn't have to probably move them around as much as they did. As the hacking projects increased, the states had to reach further afield for birds in order to be transferred. So while New York was using Alaskan birds by then, apparently deciding, well, maybe it didn't really matter about their size, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Massachusetts had gone across the border into Canada to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Nova Scotia, and were bringing Canadian birds in. So the cross-cultural, cross-continental, whatever, between our two countries was very important in terms of bringing back the bald eagle into the Northeast. Florida had its own unique hacking program. Because the southern eagles were smaller than the northern ones, this state didn't want to bring in eagles from the Northeast. While Florida had a reasonable population of eagles, it weren't enough to donate chicks to those states around it, which didn't have any birds at all. So instead, what they did was they removed eggs from the active nests in Florida, and they transferred them to Oklahoma, to a facility where they were incubated and raised to about 7 weeks of age. Then they took them back into the states of Mississippi, Alabama, and North Carolina and hacked them just the same way I did in New York. And ended up, those states began to grow their eagle population thanks to the state of Florida. Now everyone wonders, well, what about the Florida birds? They lost their eggs. Well, eagles are very good at double clutching. So what would happen is they take the eggs out of the eagle nest, the eagles would just lay more eggs. And it actually really helped the eagle population in Florida because they'd kind of gotten used to this whole thing. They were really good at raising eagles, and they were sometimes able to get the 3 eggs to be able to hatch and survive. So it bolstered the eagle population of Florida. Looking at New England and New York, we can see the dramatic increase in breeding eagle pairs since 1967, when DDT was still a threat. Only Maine had breeding pairs, and just 21 at the time. By 2023, Maine still won the prize with over 800 pairs, and New York being a close second with 426. In Florida, there was an increase from 1973, when you had 88 nests, to 2025, when the number reached a whopping 1,500. These nests are split mostly between natural trees, natural nest sites, and artificial structures such as cell towers, power poles, and even high-rise buildings, which is very unusual for eagles. This is the only state I've heard of where there is so many artificial structures that eagles are attracted to, which is kind of interesting. Most of the active nests in the state center around the central part, around where Three Lakes Wildlife Management Area, south of Orlando and north of Lake Okeechobee. It's a large population of bald eagles there. In these two maps, you can see on the left all the nests distributed throughout the state, both active and inactive. The map on the right is older, 2005, but I put it in here because it gives you a good idea of the areas in South Florida, in both the central region and along the West Coast, where eagles nests have been most successful. And I understand that there are several nests here in the celery fields in this whole area around here. So you should be very happy with that, very proud of yourselves for maintaining good habitat that they want to come to. So circling back to Montezuma for a minute and the 7 eagles that I had raised back in 1976 and 1977, my Wisconsin eaglets, W1 and W2, turned out to be brother and sister. And they were taken from the same nest. The climbers never told us that, but we found out. Their bond never wavered after they left the refuge, and they stayed together for the next 4 years when they finally mated and had one young eagle in 1980. But the most exciting news was that of M3, a rehabbed eagle from Michigan. I told you were going to hear about him again. I had lost track of him along with the other eagles that had left the refuge, and I could only hope that he had survived. In June 2015, I received word from the Department of Environmental Conservation of the state of New York that they had found his body. They'd recovered it on the side of a road, a victim of a vehicle hit. But he had a band on his leg that identified him as one of my 1977 eaglets. He was 38 years old. The oldest eagle ever known. Oldest wild eagle, I should say. There have been older ones that were kept in captivity, but the oldest wild eagle ever known. And we figured out that he had been nesting at a Hemlock Lake, which was the only surviving eagle nest when I started the project in 1976. And he had had 2 different mates and had mated for 35 years, had raised about 70 young eaglets. So this was a very special bird, and I was a very proud mama. Today in the continental US, eagles are most numerous in the Midwest and along the Atlantic Flyway. Minnesota has the 2nd largest population, but it's followed closely by Florida, which is 3rd next to Alaska, which boasts about half of the total bald eagle breeding population. The timeline of the bald eagle's recovery is defined by several key pieces of legislation and moments in the US history of conservation, beginning in 1940, when the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act was passed. By 2007, the eagle had recovered enough to be removed from the endangered species list, that although states like Tennessee were still hacking them 13 years later. After 1977, I never returned to Montezuma, although I passed it on the thruway and always craned my neck to see if I could see the tower on Clark's Ridge. I followed the news about the hacked eagles as much as I could, but once Dr. Cade moved the Peregrine Fund to Boise, Idaho, and merged it with the World Center for Birds of Prey, my source of information was gone. In 2019, Tom Cade died, and by 2020, sorry, getting my dates mixed up, and by 2020, I knew the story of the origins of the bald eagle had to be told. So I knew this also meant returning to the marshes to see the eagles again. In November 2022, my husband Larry and I were shocked when we drove into the refuge. When I had left almost 45 years before, there were no nesting eagles and no sign that the bald eagle was going to become the signature species of the refuge. But now we pass many images of eagles welcoming visitors. After I convinced the current refuge staff that I actually had been the one to start the Eagle Project, thanks to the expertise of the Cornell Peregrine Fund and Tom Cade, I was given the keys to the city, or the refuge as it were. I was shown the giant sculpture, which sits right on the New York Thruway. If you've driven that road, either east or west, you can't miss it. It was designed by Jay Seaman for the 40th anniversary of the Reintroduction Project, and it is quite stupendous. Accompanied by our Montezuma guides, we bushwhacked our way up to Clark's Ridge, long overgrown, but still the home of the nest tower, albeit a bit bedraggled all these years later. Even the box holding the video camera was still intact. I went down memory lane with my patient listeners as they learned about the project, the start of the eagle recovery, and the role Cornell had played in its design. As we stood on the dike road that runs along Shockey Pool, from where I had rescued so many youngsters from the cattails, adults and immature eagles were flying all around me. I celebrated their success of 7 active nests inside the refuge, with 14 more in the area surrounding the boundaries. Some pairs even build 2 nests. Some people think it's insurance against disaster, but I like to think they are so secure and comfortable that they want it as winter and as summer house. Here I would like to share what was racing through my mind at this time by reading a short passage from the book about this experience. Several eagles fly over my head towards a group of red maples hugging the inner tributary. Adults land on tree limbs overhanging the dark road, while the immatures, 6 altogether, with their uniforms of chocolate brown from head to toe, perch like preschoolers in one of 2 adjacent trees. I want to call the class to order, to watch and listen and tell them where they have come from and what it means for them to be here on this day. I want to tell them about their grandparents, those stalwart 7 eagles, and the others who followed them, whose resilience and persistence paved the way for their return to the Northeast nearly 50 years ago. I want to stand there, alone with my birds, until they can grasp their own significance. Although my heart is gladdened by the sight of so many bald eagles today, I know that their success and increased numbers haven't always been without criticism. Many people don't like having predators in their world or don't understand that an ecosystem is most healthy when every trophic level is full and balanced. An apex predator like an eagle can have enemies among humans who find it hard to watch him take a fish from an osprey, or take over its chicks, or take over its platform, or harass loons or herons who are nesting in their lake. Making room for all species is not something we humans do easily. Instead, we pick sides, and often the underdog becomes our cause. We have forgotten that almost 50 years ago, the bald eagle was the underdog, and only with our help and vigilance was saved from extinction. I hope we can learn to champion his comeback, to be tolerant when he behaves according to his true nature, and to ensure the threats that still exist in his world are mitigated so as not to repeat the damage of DDT. And there are significant threats to the eagle we have to be concerned about. Lead poisoning results from lead shot used by hunters that drops into the mud of streams, lakes, and rivers, or is inside the carcasses of waterfowl or deer. Lead fragments are in the gut piles the hunters leave behind to lighten their load as they leave the hunting area. It can also come from lead sinkers used in fishing. Lead wreaks havoc on an eagle's nervous and digestive systems, causing him to lose weight and eventually die. Shooting continues to be an issue, as do vehicle deaths. M3, of course, was testament to this. Eagles are scavengers, so a roadkill or carcass on train tracks or on the side of a road are too enticing for a hungry eagle who will arrive to eat dinner and be hit. AVM, or avian vacuolar myelinopathy, is caused by a toxin in cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, that transfers to eagles through water birds like coots. Wind farms, although a positive resource to counter our use of fossil fuels, can also take out eagles, especially when built too close to their nesting sites. Immatures, as we have learned, are too uncoordinated to avoid the giant blades when learning to fly. Other threats like rodenticides, especially anticoagulant rodenticides used by homeowners, businesses, and farmers, are lethal to eagles who ingest the targeted rodents, unwittingly looking for an easy meal. The more insidious threats of habitat loss, which often reduces nest sites by logging or thinning of tall trees or developing lake shores and rivers, and of course, climate change, which affects the food supply the eagle depends on. And our latest and perhaps most serious worry, avian flu, which has taken its toll on many eagles, especially in coastal states like Georgia and Florida, where eagles eat water birds infected with the disease, but also in former eagle strongholds like Michigan and Minnesota. It is believed that this virus killed 600 eagles in 45 states in the last few years. Migrating flocks of snow geese usually winter along the Atlantic coast from New Jersey to South Carolina. On their way south from their breeding grounds in Greenland and Canada, they follow the Atlantic flyway down the Connecticut River Valley, where they can be seen in New Hampshire, along the Hudson River in New York, and then through New Jersey and Pennsylvania on their way south. Last winter, thousands of these geese succumbed to avian flu in eastern Pennsylvania, and at least 1,000 were found dead in New York. Alarmingly, snow geese are a favorite prey item of bald eagles. Avian flu was discovered in 35 counties in Florida in 2024. In 2025, the 2 eaglets who were being followed by the public on the Southwest Eagle Cam near Fort Myers were found dead due to this virus, apparently due to eating an infected water bird fed to them by their parents, of course, unwittingly. This bird is too majestic to be ignored again. But as we have seen with many less charismatic birds, if we take our eye off the ball, we lose the brilliant biodiversity that makes our planet survive. The Bald Eagle Project was a success, its recovery extraordinary, and the lessons we've learned should be enduring. As we celebrate our 250th anniversary of our nation, we owe a debt to the natural world around us. We need to respect it, conserve it, and be mindful of its future. I hope you all can read Return to the Sky if you haven't already done so, but most important, that you're able to enjoy the many bald eagles who have made Florida their home. Their comeback in this state has been miraculous, and every sighting of an eagle flying overhead with a fish in its talons on its way to their nest should be celebrated. So I appreciate you all coming. Take care of your eagles, and if you would like to buy a book, they're in the back, and I would be love to answer any questions you may have in the meantime. Thank you.
So
Questions?
we have one online. The map shows eagle nests in Florida. Doesn't show any in the Everglades, Big Cypress and Waxahachie preserves. Any idea how many nests there are in those areas?
No, but I've done a lot of studies about that because my husband and I go to the Everglades every year. I've been going for 20 years. So I've been looking for eagles for 20 years. They don't like the Everglades. We don't really know why. There are some nests. It's not true that there are none, but they don't show up on a map necessarily. And I think my personal opinion, which is absolutely baseless, but I'll give it to you anyway. I just don't think that there are enough tall trees that are near fishable water bodies. Yeah, well, oh, I'm so glad somebody else thinks that. Yeah, because it makes sense to me. With the two nests that I know about that are in the Everglades, one is in the 10,000 Islands. It sits up on an island. It's not doing very well. This year it was not occupied. The other one is on the Big Cypress Bend Trail, and that one blew down one year and they rebuilt it right nearby. And I did see this year a fledgling who had just come out of the nest and was sitting in the tree right nearby. So that was a very good sign. But I think it's just not good habitat for them. I don't think it's anything more than that. You guys have tall trees, you've got water all around you. Eagles are lazy. They're terrible fishermen, which is one reason they like ospreys, because ospreys are much more adept at catching fish. But they have to have the two go together. They have to have the tall trees. They need to be able to see around them, but they need water bodies that are easy fishing. And they just don't have it in the Everglades. So that's the answer I have.
Great.
Anybody else?
Anybody here?
Yeah.
We hear more and more about the dangers of PFAS, those plastic.
The microplastics, yeah,
And I
yeah.
wonder if that's a danger for raptors as well.
It's a danger for everything, including us. Yes, definitely it is. There are actually people doing research on that and trying to take dead eagles and look at their insides and see how much of a difference is made. They haven't been able to directly correlate the presence of microplastics to the death of that particular eagle. Usually the eagle has died of something else, but there's certainly probably good evidence that they are going to be hurting the eagles eventually. It just isn't listed as one of the major threats right now because there's so many others that seem to be much more obvious and that you can really pinpoint when you bring a dead eagle in. But yeah, microplastics, horrible. And you can imagine that they are picking them up because they're scavengers. So they're picking up whatever the animal has eaten, that they're scavenging. So they're going to be,
And probably the same amount of threat from the plastics as to us, but we still don't really grok it.
Right. We don't
Right.
know. We don't know what it's doing to us yet.
Right. So
We're pretty sure it is doing something. Yeah. No, that's a good question though. Yes.
With the change in direction of our current government relative to EPA
I
and
can't.
wildlife protection and whatnot, what can we as citizens do
Yeah.
to renew the focus and raise the awareness to the problems that lack of focus is causing.
Yeah, well, that's a really
Can
good
you
question.
repeat the question for the people on?
Oh, sorry.
His question.
Okay, I think the question was, what can you do, considering the political climate we're in right now, that seems to be going in a different direction? What can you do to bring it back and be able to preserve our environment as much as we can? I would say probably the major word is vote. Your vote counts, and it's got to happen. It's got to be people who are basically raising themselves up and saying, this is important to us. And it's not okay that national forests are being thinned. And it's not okay that all these other things are happening. And it's not okay that you're ignoring a lot of other environmental factors because the fish are declining. In Maine, for example, there's been a lot of talk about fish decline and the correlation to the eagles not producing as many young as they used to. So there are definitely facts out there that you can point to. Educate yourselves as much as you can. Support places like this. I mean, this is a perfect example of what you should be doing, and you're all doing it. And other than that, you know, you just have to keep fighting it. Don't take it lying down. Yeah.
Thank you for leading the cause.
I don't know that bad. Hi, yes.
Could you speak to the relationship between the caracaras that we have here along with the bald eagles? Because I've seen them both fighting over carrion.
Yeah, well, I don't know that much about that. I'll be very honest.
Question.
Oh, sorry. You wanted me to talk about the relationship between the caracara and the bald eagle because you're seeing them fighting over carrion and they're in the same area right here. I don't know that much about caracara behavior. I do know they eat carrion, and of course, if the two are going to go after something, they are going to fight, just like the eagle will fight the osprey for the fish. But other than that, I don't know that there is much of a relationship. I mean, the caracara, I have to admit, I saw my first one today. So that's how many are in eagle territories. I go to a lot of places where there are a lot of eagles, and I've never seen one. So this is a very special location that you're lucky to have them. So there may be some competition in terms of the carrion between them. Eagles will eat anything. I mean, pretty much, you know, they'll eat water birds, they'll eat fish, they'll eat.
I think caracara will too.
Okay, will they? Okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't even know that. I would imagine there's competition. They're both big birds and they both live in the same area. There's got to be. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And
We
yes.
have some online. What an amazing story and success. I was honored. I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo and I can't quite follow. I was honored to watch a pair of eagles raise and fledge 2 eaglets this summer from my property out east here in our neighborhood. Does anyone keep a list of the nesting sites here? So,
Yes, you can find that online.
somebody says you can find them online.
Yeah, it's under the Florida Eagle Project. I think.
Under the Florida Eagle Project, maybe.
It seemed like when I was doing research on Florida, because I was obviously not from here, I wanted to find out a little bit more about your birds. There was an awful lot of information about Florida eagles. They're very well known. The fact that you've had some for so long and you never completely lost them, which is really fantastic. So it was a matter of just building up your population, not starting from scratch. It seems like a lot of places and organizations are doing a lot of monitoring. What they aren't doing is banding, and that's understandable. It's very expensive to hire climbers for every single eagle nest and go up and band the young birds. So you're not getting that kind of data anymore because they're off the endangered species list. There's no money to really do that kind of research on them. But people are definitely, they know where the nests are and they're putting them on maps so you can find them. If their nests are in private property, people aren't going to let you know that, but they might let you know the general area where they might be.
We also have the threat of so much development that I know of eagles' nests that were there but aren't there anymore because they cut down all the trees. Clear cutting is the way to go for developers. So someone else online says, thank you for your wonderful work and thank you to Audubon for this great presentation. Someone else, Jim Yeskett, says, any reference to rodenticide toxic stats, especially in Florida?
Any
Rodenticide,
Right.
rodenticide.
Right. Well, rodenticides are used everywhere. And yeah, take a picture of this poster right here. It gives you alternatives. I think I work with a lot of rodenticide groups who are trying to ban eschars, which are the anticoagulant rodenticides. And they've been very successful in certain cities in Massachusetts, for example, where they go through the state legislature and they get them banned. But what everybody says is, but they're not giving us the alternatives. So we've got rats, we want to get rid of them. How do we do that without using rodenticides that are going to poison raptors? And there are alternatives. So take a picture of that before you leave. Yes.
Speaking to that, in my neighborhood association, because I became aware of that, I asked all of our neighbors to check with your exterminators what they use, because when you can just ask them, or when you get your bill and you can look and you can say, I want the non
Yes.
poisonous.
Yes, you can talk to them. And they're pretty knowledgeable.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, but
It really helped, and my neighbors became more encouraged and more enthused to look out and see,
Yeah.
we've seen, we have
Good.
owls, we have a bald eagle in our neighborhood,
Yeah.
and it's awareness is what it really is.
Right.
Spread all your knowledge to every other person that you can.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yes.
I just wanted you to be aware, we have sold out our supply of your books.
Oh, wow.
Mike wants to let people know. before they
Okay.
leave where they can get it, or perhaps the people online also.
Okay. So if you're not ordering more here, so they're not going to get them more here.
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Well, I can tell you I hate to do this, but the easy way to get the book is to go to Amazon. And there you will get a great price. You
And
can
if
also-
you
sorry.
brought,
Jamie inquire into that, our gift shop manager is
I
right
have-
now, so I don't want to speak for her.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you do get more in, you could put them in your newsletter or whatever you send out to your members and say, we have more of these books that people could come in. It would be really nice to buy them here. I don't encourage Amazon unless there's no other recourse. And you can also get them through the publisher and they will give you a discount. So that's nice too. Yeah.
and if you did bring a book, please.
Yes, if you brought a book,
you
I'd love
can-
to sign
You
it.
still can sign them after. That's all right. Thank you so much. This has been great. Really fascinating presentation. Thank you so much. And just so you all know, we have our last speaker, May 11th, Benjamin Dimmitt, who will be he's a conservation photographer originally from Florida, who will be discussing his book on Florida's vanishing wetlands, an unflinching look, Elegy for Wetlands. Thank you so much again. It's great to
Thank
have
you
you
all for
here.
coming.
And thank you all online. Good night.
Right.
I didn't even choose to wear this. I was just getting a bird shirt.
My goodness,
And look
look
what I
at
did.
that. All right.
Okay, last thing I put in was the link to the book. And I'm going to say good night, all. Thank you.